There are three main stages to praying in tongues. And these three main stages, if you master all of them, you will have the greatest impact in your life from the gift of praying in tongues. Most of the people whom I know who struggle with the gift of praying in tongues, they usually have struggles in either of these three areas of praying in tongues. And so in this video, I want to talk to you about those three areas of praying in tongues and the secret power of praying in tongues that actually makes these three areas very critical to your gift of praying in tongues. The first area is receiving the gift of praying in tongues. There is nothing as difficult as receiving the gift of praying in tongues, and there is nothing as easy as receiving the gift of praying in tongues. I say this because from the way I have observed it, there are two kinds of people. People who find receiving the gift of praying in tongues extremely easy. So easy that they can't even express it in words to other people who want to receive it, how easy it is. So they will just tell you things like, just ask God to give it to you, or just start praying in tongues. And you may think they are actually mocking you when they say that, but actually to them it was that easy. But then there are people like to whom receiving the gift of praying in tongues is very difficult. So for them, they will try all manner of things. They will fast, they will go and have hands laid on them, and they will do many other things to receive the gift, but they still can't receive the gift. So at the end of the day, there will always be two groups of people. Those who find it extremely easy to receive the gift of praying in tongues, and those who find it extremely difficult to receive the gift of praying in tongues. The second area is praying in tongues when the tongues you are praying feel dry. Now, this is something that is very, very common. Anyone who prays in tongues and is genuine will always experience dry tongues. At the end of the day, people who become prolific at praying in tongues and people who get results from praying in tongues, they have to contend and overcome the times when they feel dry when they're praying in tongues. There is no way around it. You have to tackle the dryness of praying in tongues. So, of course, there are people who, to them, they continue praying in tongues even when their tongues are feeling dry. But then there are those whom, if their tongues feel dry, they begin assuming that God is not with them, or they assume like they are forcing their tongues, and then they stop praying in tongues altogether. The third critical area of praying in tongues is receiving gifts from God when you're praying in tongues. Because praying in tongues is a prayer, it is very likely that you will be praying to receive things from God. And even just naturally, when you pray in tongues, God is going to deposit things in your life. He's going to work in your life. He's going to edify you. He's going to do a lot of work in you. This is what differentiates between people who pray in tongues and actually receive gifts from God and people who pray in tongues and don't receive anything from God. Sometimes you may sit down and ask yourself, why is it that some people, they pray in tongues and they get what they want? Others pray in tongues, but they don't get it. And what is like the difference? Because the way things should work is the tongues we are speaking, they are all led by the Holy Spirit. We have all received one Spirit. He is the one who is working in us. We are all praying like according to his guidance. But why is it that some will receive their gifts, some will receive their blessings, but others will not receive any gift, others will not receive any blessing? Well, here is the secret power of praying in tongues. In the book of Hebrews chapter 11 verse 6, the Bible is very clear. It says, it is impossible to please God without faith. And the Bible begins by stating that everyone who comes to God must believe that he is. Now, here is something very important that you need to understand about faith and praying in tongues. Everything that has to do with God, you can't separate it with faith, because everything that you have to do with God, it has to be done in faith. And because the gift of praying in tongues is a gift that comes from God, receiving it will require that you have a certain level of faith. Secondly, after you have received the gift, it will also be required of you to have faith when it actually comes to the second part of praying in tongues when the tongues feel dry. And even the last part of receiving instructions from God when you are praying in tongues also takes faith. And so this means that people who have great faith from the very beginning, they will usually find it very easy to receive the gift of praying in tongues. They will find it easy to continue praying in tongues even when the tongues feel dry. And they will usually find it very easy to also receive blessings from God while they are praying in tongues. For people who don't have much faith, what they will usually experience is difficulty in receiving the gift of praying in tongues, difficulty to pray through tongues that actually feel dry, and also difficulty in receiving gifts from God when they are actually praying in tongues. So you may ask yourself, now that faith is the power behind praying in tongues, what do you do to increase your faith? And well, I'll tell you, the disciples of Jesus also had the same question to Jesus. And the answer that Jesus gave them was rather ambiguous, but actually it makes a lot of sense. Jesus told them that if they had faith like a mustard seed, they could tell a mountain to be cast into the sea and it would be done for them. So what Jesus actually wanted to show them was that even the tiniest of faith is still faith. And when you believe that, then that tiny faith that you have actually becomes great faith. Therefore, stop questioning why you are not receiving the gift of praying in tongues and receive the gift of praying in tongues. Stop asking if the tongues that you speak that feel dry actually have an impact, and believe that the tongues you speak, even when they feel dry, they have an impact. And stop asking if, when you pray in tongues, you have received revelations from God. Because when you pray in tongues, you will always receive revelations from God. So believe and not ask. And then when you do that, you'll realize that the gift of praying in tongues is very powerful and it will transform your life. God bless you.